The most costly part of your EV charging solution is normally going to be the electrical work. Welcome back to another episode of the Hospitality EV Charging Minute. We're continuing on. This is episode 3 in our little mini series, diving into answering the number one question: how much does a commercial EV charging solution cost? So episode 1, we talked about the chargers and all the different things that can add to those costs. The second part of the series, we talked about the operation and maintenance, mainly the software that can go on these things, and then what you need to do for an upkeep on a maintenance standpoint. Today, we're diving into the electrical make ready, the getting your property ready for EV charging. Ironically, this one will probably be the slowest or the quickest of the podcast, not the slowest, but the quickest, because there's not as much to talk about here, but it is the most costly normally. It's normally anywhere from 50 to 70% of the cost of an EV charging solution is going to be this chunk of cost. It is a one-time cost, so that's a good side of it, but it can be a very big part. So what makes up the make-ready cost? And that's what you'll hear. The typical term in the industry is going to be make-ready. Many charging companies are going to provide you a quote for a charging solution that is what we call ground up, which means the power is sticking up out of the ground, wires inside the conduit, and there's a concrete pad to mount the charger on. The charging company will quote you a charger of that and an installation there to come mount that charger. Your electrician wires it up. So everything that's related to that ground down, so to speak, is what makes up make ready. So at the charger, you have electrical wires that power that charger. Those have to go from that charger back to the electric room and connect to the grid. So that is what we're talking about here, everything related to that. So it breaks down to a couple key components. The main one is the electrical cost, right? You've got electrical costs that is a big part of this. So we're talking about the breakers, the conduits, the wires, all that stuff to run the electricity from your existing electric panel out to where your chargers are going to be. And with that, obviously, there's the cost of trenching, the cost of putting the flower bed back, or the concrete back, or the pavement back. There's all kinds of costs that I'll add into this. But the electrical cost is the biggest chunk of it, which in a simple application, in a very easy installation, and I'd say one of the easiest we have done was in a parking garage. The charger was, we were able to mount chargers, actually 2 of them, on the wall, just on the opposite side of the electric room. So how easy is that, right? Like, we're mounting these things on the opposite wall where there's an electric panel. So you're talking about, minimal feet of wire, minimal feet of conduit. So even that, though, there's still some cost, right? You've got conduit to run. You got to go up. You got to penetrate the wall. You got to hook the charger up, right? All the parts and pieces to that. So that's a very simple installation, right? Which is basically just some conduit and wires and putting a breaker in your breaker box that has space. That can grow considerably if you don't have enough capacity in your existing electrical system, because now we'll get into maybe upgrading a panel, and even can get to the point that we have to bring in a new service entrance. That is a new feed from your power company. Little side note, if you run into that situation, always try to get your contractor or your power company to work with you to bring that in as an exterior combo panel, so that they can bring it out into the parking lot and really just bring a service entrance in for your EV chargers, because that's going to be cheaper than upgrading your entire building feed in order to then pull the power back out to the parking lot, right? When they do it this way, you can put that new panel out in the parking lot near the chargers save you other money. But those types of things can add considerable amount of money. Then there are a few other factors that are going to impact the electrical cost. And that's going to be the distance from the electric panel out to where your chargers are going. What's in the way? What do we have to cross? What do we have to tear up and replace? Concrete sidewalks, grass, is it pavement? So there's a lot of things there, right? So all that is going to add up into your electric cost. The other things that we want to look at when you're looking at the cost of the make-ready side are some items like signage. We want to make sure we're putting the right signage up. Do you need pavement markings? Do you need to put some green stripes down, some symbols down in the parking lot? Do you need to upgrade any of the lighting or security in that area? Okay. Sometimes the best place to put the chargers may be in a corner of a parking lot that maybe is not lit real well. And so do we really want to, have people drive into that unlit area without maybe looking at maybe adding a light or something down there? So those are little things that can add, that you might need to do, that add to this cost. Licensing fees and local tax fees. With the EV charging movement, there's a lot of local jurisdictions and states that are saying, wait a minute, we're missing out on gasoline tax. How are we going to collect that? So they're starting to require the people that put in EV chargers to pay some fees, at least register them. A lot of times with the level 2, don't get too worried. Level 2, you don't run into it very often, but there are some places that do it, but we take care of that for our hosts. But sometimes it's just a matter of registering them. Other items that could be in there is your design and permitting fees, maybe some reporting stuff if you've got to report on incentives and things like that. So those are the parts that go into this. Because there's so much involved and so different every location, there is really no way for me to say, hey, here's an estimate. Now, I'm going to give you some rule of thumbs to go by, but what we recommend that you do is start with what we call a rough order of magnitude budget. We will do this for all of our properties that are just getting quotes. We take a look, we make some guesses on where an electric room is, how far it's going to take. We can put together what we consider a rough order of magnitude. So that's something that's going to say, hey, we look at it, we think it's going to cost you around $12,000. Here's the things that make up that cost. Then once you move forward with your project, the next step is to get the thing designed, right? We're going to go through the design process. During that, we can now start to refine that rough order of magnitude budget. So the idea on this make ready side is start with that rough order of magnitude and work your way down, detailing that to actual cost as you go. Because once the design work is completed, then our team, so a typical process for us would go like this. If you called us and said, hey, we're interested in looking at EV charging, yes, we want you to help us with the make ready work. We are going to put together a basic, simple set of drawings, the outline drawings, what we call kind of a schematic drawing. We are going to use Google Earth basically to understand your property layouts. We are going to make some assumptions on what we can install, and we're going to lay that all out, and we're going to use data that we have on cost of components, unit pricing, and we're going to put together what we consider a rough order of magnitude budget. That could be something that's anywhere from maybe 10 to 20% higher than what we expect to actually get the work done for, but we want you to start at the right place. The next step is once our host property says, yeah, this is okay, let's go to the next step. The next step for us is to then get a more detailed design put together, because you got to start looking at that point, you need to look at, make sure that you're going to meet all the local code requirements, or their handicap requirements, anything like that. So we need to do a design. We need to get the design team together, put the design together. From that, our design team will actually put a design budget together. This is not going to be a contractor pricing it yet, but it'll be our estimate based on the current design. So typically that will now drive the cost down. Then once you look at that, we've got design documents completed. We then take those out to the market, go to our electrical partners that we work with and say, okay, here's this draft set of drawings. We need you to now go to the property, do the evaluation, make sure that the assumptions are accurate, and give us a final price for this work. So that's how we work in our steps to refine the budget for the electrical make-ready work. So that's the process you want to follow as well, because you're not going to know what the cost is going to be for real until that electrician has been to your property, looked at everything you have to make sure that you have the capacity, that your stuff is up to date, that it's safe, and all those things that are needed, and understand what they have to do to get from the electric panel to the chargers. Are we crossing firewalls? Are we, do we have to directionally drill under a parking lot? There's so many factors. You won't know the real cost until that electrician visits. But again, for a rule of thumb, which I wanted to do here in this series of podcasts, is give everybody a rule of thumb to work off of. A simple installation like the one I talked about might run $1,000 to $3,500 per charger. And that simple could be one that's the real simple one was the other side of the wall. But also we have times that we run out of the electric rooms on the exterior of the building, parking lot, parks up against the building. So it's not a huge run, maybe 20, 30 feet to get to where the charger is versus the electrical panel. In that instance, you're talking anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500 per charger. When you get more complex, we start getting up and we'll start to see instances where we run $4,000 to maybe $7,000 per charger. So for 2 chargers, it might cost you $14,000 to get the power out. If you have a very complicated scenario, maybe a long distance that you're running, different things like that can impact that, right? And then if you have to do upgrades, if you need a sub panel, if you need an additional panel, if you need a service entrance, those things can run $15,000 or $5,000 to $15,000 or more, depending on what is involved. So again, rough order of magnitude, we don't consider that part of it. When the electrician comes out or the designer comes out to do the design work, that's when you'll know those kind of things and can make smart decisions from there. So if we were to sum this all up and wrap it up in a big bow for you and go back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago on that episode, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to give you a typical installation that we have done to our properties, which is a dual charger mounted on a single pedestal that's connected to our Connect software, to our software at the Connect 10 level. So with that, you're talking about $3,500, $3,500 for the charger and the pedestal. Okay. We would charge around $1,200 for the installation and programming and setup of that charger. So you got $3,500, you got another $1,200 on top of that. So you're looking at $4,700 for your chargers. The software to operate those 2 chargers for the year is going to cost you roughly $600. So now you're looking at $5,300. Now let's put the make ready on. We're going to do this based on kind of a pretty simple hotel installation with a parking lot, abutting the building near the charging. So we're talking about 50 feet from the charger, charger to electric room, no more than 50 feet. Would say that's another $6,000. So you were at 53 plus 6, so you're looking at $11,300 So that's often what we tell most of our, prospective customers when we're talking to them is think about around $12,000. You can have a level two chargers in your parking lot, ready to go, ready to charge your guests, your customers, or your tenants. And so that is our best way to try to answer to you, how much does a commercial EV charging solution cost? That's all for today's episode. I hope you learned some more about EV charging, and we'll see you on the next episode.